In this video, I'll answer the question of whether or not it's possible to fully experience the ancient site of Delphi in a one-day trip. I'll also give my opinion on whether making a day trip to the well-known location is a good way to spend a portion of the time that you have here in Athens. For my trip, I chose one of the tour operators here in Athens to handle the transportation and get me to the locations that I needed to visit. Ultimately, I spent 3 hours in Delphi on a weekday in early December. Let's get right to the good stuff. This was at one time the center or navel of the world. The legend goes that Zeus simultaneously released two eagles from opposite ends of the earth, and they met at Delphi. An ancient marble monument was placed at the site to commemorate the significance of this place. This cone sits today in the midst of the archaeological site. The original, more elaborate stone is also a part of the complex. While that all relates to being the physical center of the world, a case can be made that this was also the figurative center of the earth for a time. This is the area where the Oracle of Delphi was consulted for hundreds of years. As we're told, leaders, scholars, and even ordinary people made the trek to this mountainous region to seek the advice of the oracle. The first mention of wisdom being dispensed here dates to the 8th century BC, and the oracle was in business into the 4th century AD. That's a span of almost 1,200 years. The time when Delphi and the oracle was most prominent was from the 4th to the 6th centuries BC. What happened here and the legends associated with that continue to be talked about today. Somewhere along the line, the story of the oracle seeped into my brain and stuck there. Turns out I did get one thing wrong though. I always thought it was the Oracle of Delphi. Turns out that pronunciation is wrong. It's the Oracle of Delphi. Delphi is located in central Greece, 2 or 3 hours from Athens. The archaeological site is on the lower slopes of Mount Parnassus. It has long been a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The area in which the ruins are situated is spectacular. Mountaintops loom over this location, and the Pleistos River Valley lies below. It is about 10 kilometers from this place down to the waters of the Gulf of Corinth. An estimated 600,000 people come to this area every year to check out the ruins and hear the stories associated with them. There was a decent number of people on the day that I dropped by. When visiting, there are two main portions of the original complex to see. Most of the buildings and ruins are situated above the road which winds through the region. That is a ticketed entry area. When I went, admission was €6, or about $6.50 US. It's double that during the main tourist season. About a half mile down the slopes and below the road is a smaller group of ruins. This is the Athena part of the complex. It was the first location that visitors coming from the east would have encountered as they made their pilgrimage to see the oracle. In ancient Greece, there were numerous oracles that would dispense advice. They were said to be connected to the gods. The Oracle of Delphi was one of 5 major oracles in Greece and the one which remains the most famous. Various women were chosen from the peasant population to serve as the oracle, or as it was called at the time, the Pythia, or high priestess of the temple. They were always 50 years old or older. At one point, there were so many people seeking guidance from the oracle that multiple Pythias were at work. It was here at the Temple of Apollo that the oracle or oracles fielded questions and provided responses. Priests of the temple interpreted the often cryptic messages that came from the oracles. Through the years, there's been debate over how the oracles provided their wisdom. Apparently, they worked from small enclosed spaces below the temple. At one point, it was thought that natural gases seeping up from the ground caused the oracles to hallucinate and see visions. That could explain how their advice would seemingly be transmissions from the gods and render the need for interpretation by the priests. In recent years, however, the notion that those serving as oracles were under the influence has been questioned by scientists. They say that while there are traces of gas seeping from the ground, that the amounts are not sufficient enough to affect those serving as the oracles to such a degree. A definitive answer about whether gases impacted the proclamations of the oracles has not been agreed upon at this point. Questions for the oracles range from the mundane to those with monumental importance. They were anything from whether to go into battle to when to plant crops. The answers were not always clear. For instance, a king sought input here to learn whether he should go to war against the Persians. The response from the oracle was that doing so would cause the fall of a great empire. The king took that to mean he should proceed, and his side was defeated. Turns out the oracle was correct. It's just that the empire controlled by the king was the one which fell. Some advice attributed to the oracles should still be followed today. Certain rules to live by were inscribed on the temple. There were said to be about 150 of these maxims. 3 of them are most famous and have been widely quoted. Know thyself has been held up as a rule relating to the importance of self-reflection and knowing your own limitations. Nothing too much can be seen as a call for moderation, both in terms of consumption and controlling emotions. Give a pledge and trouble is at hand could be viewed as caution against borrowing money or committing oneself to significant promises. There is wisdom in all 3. I was frankly a bit surprised at the site with how little mention there was of the oracles and the stories associated with them. I could have missed where that was mentioned, but I saw hardly any reference to the piece of history and legend that makes this place famous all around the globe. Primarily, the signs and attention here are focused almost exclusively on the ruins and the various structures that once existed. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just my observation. At this site, the higher up you go, the better things get. Near the top is the Temple of Apollo, which is very impressive. Just a little beyond that, though, is that well-preserved theater, which is maybe even more impressive. Beyond that, though, there is another site. It's the stadium. That was not open to the public when I was here. Upon entry into the ticketed area, one of the first attractions is the Roman Agora. As the name implies, this was a meeting place that was established during the time of Roman rule. As visitors ascend the slopes, among the sights they see are treasuries. These were built by various city-states around Greece in tribute to the perceived assistance they received from the oracles in defeating their enemies. The structures would include some of the spoils of those victories. The now restored treasury of the Athenians acknowledges victory in the Battle of Marathon, which took place in 490 BC. These tributes paid to Delphi made this place very wealthy. Near the treasuries was the Stoa of the Athenians. This would have been a covered walkway where items were bought and sold, business was conducted, and political decisions were made. The Temple of Apollo is probably the star attraction here. In addition to being the place where the oracles were situated, the temple was also a place to seek healing and to offer sacrifices. What is visible now dates to the 4th century BC. It is said to be the 5th temple constructed at this location, built around the end of the 6th century BC. Reconstruction took place after an earthquake in 330 BC. The theater here is pretty special. It was built in the 4th century BC and underwent a number of renovations through the years. The theater was built in a spot to take advantage of the natural slope of the mountain. It had a total of 35 rows of seating and could accommodate around 4,500 spectators. The lower, non-ticketed portion of the Delphi ruins is small, but still quite impressive. This is the temple and sanctuary of Athena. It contains several treasuries and altars, much like the upper site. The feature that stands out is the tholos, which is a round-shaped construction. That's somewhat unusual for Greek architecture, and experts aren't sure what purpose it served. It was built in the 4th century BC and had a diameter of 13.5 meters. It included 20 columns on the outside and 10 more on the inside. Only 3 of those exterior columns rise today, having been restored to their original appearance. Many incredible names from history are said to have come to Delphi. Those include Socrates, Alexander the Great, and Emperor Nero. It's incredible to think that you are walking over the same part of the planet as those individuals did so many years before. Ultimately, many of the buildings here were destroyed by Theodosius I in 390 AD. The site was ignored for centuries, and a small village even took shape right on top of the ruins. It was only after an earthquake in the late 1800s that villagers were relocated and archaeological work began on a large scale. That would reveal what is seen here today. Do not miss the opportunity to go into the museum. The same ticket gets you into the archaeological site and to this place. There are some truly extraordinary pieces inside this building. The museum is one of the most visited in Greece, with hundreds of thousands of people coming through here each year. It contains 14 different exhibit rooms, each holding artifacts from different time periods at the archaeological site. The oldest relics date to the 8th century BC. Well over 2,000 square meters is devoted to items, all of which were found in the surrounding area. There are a variety of types of pieces on display. Many statues and sculptures fill the space. There are friezes from some of the buildings. Each of those tells part of a story from the past. Probably the most impactful piece from the entire museum is the Sphinx of Naxos. It is enormous. This piece was dedicated in Delphi by the people of Naxos, an island in the Aegean Sea. It is from the 4th century BC. It was placed on top of a column and would have reached nearly 40 feet into the sky. Also of note is a bronze sculpture from the 5th century BC. It depicts a chariot driver and is one of the finest examples of this type of artwork from its period. I spent most of my time in Delphi on the grounds of the archaeological site, and by the time I entered the museum, it was not long before it was scheduled to close. I could have used another half hour or more. The tour that I took to visit the site also made a couple of other stops. One was in the village of Delphi. It is situated a short 5-minute walk from the main archaeological venue. I did not spend much time in the village, but it looked fairly charming with small shops, restaurants, and places to stay. There was a great view over the valley and off to the Gulf of Corinth in the distance. Another nearby village actually looked even more inviting than Delphi. It is called Arahova. Our van moved slowly through its narrow streets, providing just a glimpse of the interior. We did stop at a viewpoint outside of the town. From there, you get a nice look at how the picturesque village sat along the hillside. My tour was operated by a company called Sights of Athens. Both the ride to Delphi and the return trip took about 3 hours. About a third of that was getting in and out of Athens, but the rest provided sometimes spectacular views of the Greek countryside. The price for the tour was $33 per person. I was impressed by the ruins of the archaeological site and astounded by the relics from the place that filled the museum. I'm also amazed at the story of the Oracle, especially considering how long common people and the elite traveled to Delphi for advice. I would absolutely recommend a visit to the site during a stay here in Athens. There's plenty to see and experience here, but the trip to Delphi provides an even fuller picture of Greece during its golden age. There's plenty more ahead from this great country here on Old, Alone, and Far From Home. Make sure you come back for all of that.